Everyone see this and hear me okay? Yeah. So just to start with, I know that hackers and security people, we tend to be a little bit more timid at times, so I'm going to encourage everyone to not do that for a little bit. And I'd really like this to be way more of like a, instead of me yapping at you for like a while, I'd like to make this more of a discussion. So like, if anyone has thoughts or, opinions or questions, ask those like immediately, we can like kind of talk through stuff. I think that's gonna make for a lot more of an interesting session than me just like saying words for a while, right? Additionally, I think, most of you know by now, but I wanna really kind of do like a bit of a lab-ish thing where we're doing the live hacking on a game here. In order to participate in that, you just need a Windows computer or Windows VM, and then a couple of small tools like Cheat Engine, DNSpy. I'm actually gonna put up the list in just a second. But if we don't end up having like enough people that want to do that or want to participate by the time we get to it, then I have a backup plan where we could just like watch the John Hammond videos that just came out about the exact same things that I would be going through. He did a coverage thing on the game that I made for DEF CON, which was cool and surprising, but we could always just watch that if not enough people want to like engage with the live version of it. But I would rather do the live version of it so we can all like work on it together. Cool. So is this going to move forward? Yes. So I'm Julian. I have sort of a history in offensive security is my background. I was doing offensive security stuff, even before college, just kind of like learning different things here and there. I had a group in Austin actually that was similar to this called Austin Hackers Anonymous that I was going to a lot. And so, I think it's really cool that, spaces like this really do help kind of like motivate and get you up to speed on things over time. So that's why I also wanted to come support this because I haven't been to one outside of Austin. I co-founded a company called Truffle Security. We make Trufflehog, which is a popular open source secret scanning product. If you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's pretty cool, I like to think. And after that, or actually before that, really even, some of my other research was more in like password cracking. I created a rule set for statistical-based password cracking that's released as part of like Hashcat and Kali now. That was some of my earlier research. And then I was lucky enough to be on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. That was several years ago now, some official has been. Please understand my difficult times right now. And I also just recently founded this gamehacking.gg thing where I really wanted to bring this underserved community of cybersecurity within games. I think that there's not a lot of people that are doing it or talking about it, but I also think it's like maybe the coolest subject within security. And so I really wanted to like dig in on, being able to move that forward. We did our first event at DEF CON 32 this a couple months ago. It was a lot of time preparing for that event. And while organizing a company for Truffle, there's a lot of people to come on in. There's a lot of people for Truffle to like work with, but I'm paying those people. I'm not paying any of the people working on this DEF CON thing. So herding a bunch of sheep volunteers for DEF CON, that was actually a lot harder. And we definitely could use way more people in the future. So in terms of what I was saying for, if you wanted to play along with the actual lab stuff later, this is the list of the stuff that I was talking about. Most of them are very small files. The most important of which is the actual game from gamehacking.gg. You'll see it on there for one of the very first links. The other ones, I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second about what the specific function of each of those are. So our website and our community, the real goal of it is to provide a super accessible, low barrier to entry way for people to engage with game hacking. I think a lot of people, especially I was noticing when we were at DEF CON, people would come up and say, well, I don't really know anything about this. And I think that's true about a lot of the places at DEF CON, any of these villages. How many people have actually been to DEF CON? Yeah, not actually that many, but if you've been there, you might have noticed that like a lot of the places are really reaching for like the top end of talent, right? So like if you're at the Cloud Village, they're gonna have a lot of really expert level cloud stuff. If you're at any of the other ones like packet hacking and stuff, like you already have to come in with a pretty large band of knowledge to engage with whatever content they have. And so I wanted to make this as low barrier to entry as possible, make it super easy for anyone with a computer to understand and get them to engage in it.
And you need Windows computer, right?
The Windows computer or a Windows VM.
So it's high bar already.
Yeah, that's fair. If I had to do something different on the way that we positioned all of that for DEF CON, I would have changed how we thought of like the Windows computing and VM. The problem is, in the game hacking space, realistically, all games are Windows or console. That you can, there is a growing community of people using like Linux, and I have a little bit to mention on that later. But all of the tooling in the space is Windows specific, so I wasn't trying to like cross-port things. I did for a little bit try to cross-port things over to like Mac and Linux, and that just became more burdensome than useful.
Yeah.
But yeah, good point. And I think that one really important thing about this community and why I like to differentiate it from there are cheating communities that exist, like to actually exploit games and cheat at them, which is what we're doing. But I think that there's a very clear difference between the learning capacity for how game hacking is done versus the actual like cheating for a competitive game. I'm a big fan of games, so I don't like cheating, but I do love the concept of learning how they work and understanding how they're attacked so that we know what to do about it. And so why really game hacking? Like I mentioned, it's really not about cheating, but I think that games is in a way, and this might sound extreme, but I think it's the ultimate art form, right? Because it combines so many different concepts of art all in one thing. You have audio, you have lighting, you have like game design, you have so many components that are like having to balance. And I think that as an art form, it's really cool. And it makes for a really interesting way to learn something technical that can, you know, actually get you across a lot of other platforms. The things that you learn within game hacking, I think, are extremely applicable to basically all other parts of cybersecurity. And we'll talk a little bit about each of those. So I like to think about the way that we do game hacking for this in terms of like 4 pillars. One of those pillars is reverse engineering. So reverse engineering is like, I think that the fun quote that I like for it is everything is open source if you know assembly, right? So as long as you're able to just put that program in a debugger and look at it, you basically have the ability to read the code for it. And that is extremely important in game hacking. The modding side of things, maybe one of my favorites, just because of the functionality of how modding works and what it can do for the game. It can basically completely reinvent the game entirely. And I think that while this is not cheating, it is using a lot of the same skills and like resources that you would if you were like exploiting cheats. Memory hacking is probably one of the ones that people think of the most when you're talking about game hacking. So that's, you know, literally just going into memory and modifying some values. Like if your money was stored within a certain value and you're able to like change it to be very high, all of a sudden you have a bunch more money within whatever game you're playing. And lastly, anti-cheat antivirus. This one's maybe the most specific, that modding to the to the games environment, but I think that there is still a really big analogy there to antiviruses and the way sort of attackers from a cat and mouse perspective have to balance the arms race of who was able to catch who. So these are the 4 pillars that I try to nestle things under for the game hacking community, and are the things that I want to focus on for how we bring stuff into the future for this. Because again, this community of things is still very new. We have a big growing base of people on Discord and stuff who have become very interested and who have heard about it from various places. And so I think as we grow, centralizing across those 4 things is great. So going into a little bit more detail here, reverse engineering, I think that, how many people are familiar with reverse engineering or have done it? Yeah, not too many, but like if you're really good at reverse engineering, it's just such an important skill to have. And I think that this image is pretty great because 2 favorite things for reverse engineers to look at are malware and games, because they're very complicated and they have a lot of like ability to control or understand what's going on from a either malicious or exploiting perspective. And if you really know how it works, like you said, anything is open source, and so you can find parts of the game that you wouldn't have understood before and are able to like reverse the logic on that and see exactly what it's doing and potentially then also change that logic. And this skill, again, super applicable for normal cybersecurity stuff, but if you're able to learn it within a game's context, I think that's way more rewarding and is just a more fun thing to do. If you've ever done like a CTF where you're doing reverse engineering, typically like your best output is going to be something where it just prints the string of a flag, which, while exciting because you did it, is not very like visually pleasing, or like it doesn't have the same sort of eureka moment factor, whereas something where, let's say you're reversing the way that a game works and you completely changed the logic of how a certain boss or enemy behaves, it can be a lot more exciting to see that. So the tools that you'll be looking for this type of stuff, Ghidra is an open source a reverser that was actually put out by the government. It is a great alternative to something like IDA Pro, which is the industry standard and best, but it is very expensive for an IDA Pro license. And so I think that the happy medium, in my opinion, between those 2 is Binary Ninja. The people there are really awesome, and it's a great tool, and you can have a free and paid version of that, which are both great. I would say that from the game's perspective, if you want to really get into assembly, there's a great game on Steam called Squally, in which goes through the process of teaching you assembly and assembly hacking through a game. And they do that by like the enemies, for instance, will do some sort of attack, and then you can like stop time and change how the assembly for that attack literally functions in the game. And it's not like a middleware version of where you're operating on like fake code and it's looking for like a pattern matched answer. You're actually modifying, they're giving you the tools that really modify the assembly of that attack. And so, for instance, if you divide by 0 or something within that, like it'll crash the game because your computer does not know how to deal with that. But a really cool way to learn some basic assembly if you haven't dealt with any of that before. Does anyone, I said that I want to keep things engaging or anything. Does anyone have any thoughts, questions, or otherwise about anything so far? I just kind of want to take little breaks to see if that's the case. No? Okay. So modding here, one of my favorites, it's because you can just really do anything you want with an already prepackaged game. And I think that if you're interested in being a game developer or doing game development in any way, modding a game is a really easy way to sort of break into that without having to start all the way from scratch with something. It gets you your hands dirty on being able to make something impactful and cool without having to make an entire game. And you can do whatever you want with it, which is the really cool part. This picture is from a game called Garry's Mod, which I played growing up a lot. There were a lot of different mods from that. Garry's Mod was basically a version of Half-Life where they took all of the assets and basically allowed you to do whatever you wanted with them. And then that people created even more stuff on top of that. I think it's had a resurgence recently and is also part of what like Skibidi Toilet and things, if you have any Gen Alpha, Gen Z friends, I think that's all still in Garry's Mod right now. Popular tools here in terms of helping you mod, Weaponix is a really good one for just kind of making a really easy patcher injector, and then Melmler is a really great one as well. My modding experience, there's a game called Lethal Company. Who's heard of Lethal Company? Any chance? One person? It was a really popular game for like, it was one of those games that was a cult moment for just a little bit and then kind of stop being popular, but it was a game where it was very scary. You went around with your friends and picked up stuff to sell inside of a monster populated area. I created a mod on one of those where it turned one of the enemies into Thomas the Tank Engine and chased you around all the time, and I thought that was really funny. And then there's a lot of other popular things that you can do from a modification perspective, like some really popular ones like replacing all the enemies in the game with like Simpsons characters. I think is really just a stupid and fun example. Or like in Grand Theft Auto, like creating a gun that shoots cars at people. There's just a really huge amount of unlimited space and things that you can do here. How many people who's heard of Fortnite? Now I know people are lying if you don't put up your hand. There's no way. So does anyone know why it's called Fortnite? No? I think this is a fun story, but like their original game had nothing to do with what the game is currently. The game now, for those who are less familiar, is a battle royale in which a circle gets smaller and smaller and the one person lives and that's it, right? That was not the game that they had made. They made a game in which you build a fort and you need to survive a zombie invasion coming at your fort through a night, thereby Fortnite, right? And so they had all this building system created. They had combat system where like you can even see the zombies trying to get them from this picture that they still use. But they found out that like an internal mod that one of their own employees created was this battle royale concept. And they did that because of a game called Public Unknown Battleground, PUBG, in which was the first one that popularized it.
Which came first? Fortnite or PUBG?
PUBG. Yeah, they were the first one popularizing this battle royale concept, and someone created a mod inside of their own game that was like, hey, look, I did our thing, but all the assets are there. We just changed game logic a little bit to make it, turn on friendly fire, and then make a map where a circle goes down. And then we still have the building system. So that became now their bread and butter, and they're one of the most popular and successful games because of an internally created mod, basically. And the same situation for this game on the bottom left is Dota. Dawn of the Ancients, whatever, is a very popular game, which is who's heard of Dota or MOBAs, League of Legends, anything like that? That's all from this concept of modding as well, where Dota actually was a Warcraft mod, a game called Warcraft. Someone modded that and created basically an extremely popular sub-game genre called MOBA, which is a massively online battle arena, I think is what the actual words are. But now there are a ton of games emulating that same concept, and again, all from someone who created a mod of another game. The last one I'll talk about here is from actual DEF CON. If you've been to DEF CON, there is a game mod that has effectively been one of the longest running competitions outside of the actual live CTF at DEF CON. And it's called Hack Fortress. It's been around for a long time. There's a game called Team Fortress 2, which is a team-on-team game. And in Hack Fortress, you still have the team-on-team aspect of it, but you also have 5 other people on each team that are hackers. Those hackers are solving CTF puzzles, and as they get points, they're able to cash those in for power-ups for their in-game team. And so it creates this really like crazy version of a normal game that I think like that mod of that game has lived on in hacker culture in a while, and yet we've not had a game hacking type village there. So that really made me want to like pursue that even more. Okay, anti-cheat. So anti-cheat is an interesting subject matter, and I think that, as I was mentioning before, it's similar to antivirus in at least the capacity of how you think about the cat and mouse version of someone trying to attack. They make a new thing. Okay, now we have to like do something better. The anti-cheat has like a couple of interesting nuances that don't exist within like malware. There are things, external cheats is the most simple. Let's say that you have your game is running and you have your own other exe that's interacting with the game, sort of separate from it. That's called an external cheat. You could do things like draw like an extra cursor on things or like visualize when someone else has popped up. There actually, I didn't put this in here, but there's even new monitors coming out, new gaming monitors, in which they're sort of selling cheating almost as part of their thing that they're allowing. Where like the monitor software runs, it's able to identify, like, they know what this game is, and it's got a mini map. And let's say there was someone in Fog of War where you couldn't see them and their icon's not showing up in this mini map. But the second it does, your monitor software can pick it up and say like, hey, there's like an enemy over there that you need to be aware of. And they're actually selling this as like a feature, and gaming companies are like, hey, stop, that's not cool. But external cheats are interesting, and but they're often very like identifiable by antivirus. Internal cheats is more like whenever you're hacking the game itself, the DLLs or the logic on the game to get other access. So for instance, you can inject code into a DLL for the game that's happening and change the code for what it was like what we were talking about with modding. This is very detectable as well for most any reasonable anti-cheat. Because they're going to be able to see that this DLL was modified from whatever the hash was expecting at runtime. And they will often catch and ban you from that. So, okay, those two things don't work. So now we have to, keep going as the attacker, we have to do more. And so there are kernel level cheats where now you're saying, okay, we have to go past user land here and say, we're gonna operate at the highest privilege in the kernel. And the only way that people are able to do that is by taking over drivers. For instance, you can have signed drivers by Microsoft that are trusted to run super level kernel commands on your computer. But if those have vulnerabilities in them, exploitability in them, then an attacker can take that over and run code within that privilege level, thereby interacting with and bypassing any ability for this anti-cheat software to detect them, because you can just turn off anti-cheat if you have kernel level permissions. But now, on the other side, anti-cheat manufacturers say, okay, well now we have to run at the kernel level because it's the only way to prevent cheating. And so it just keeps going up and up. And I think that there are, like, this is a hardware cheat is sort of similar to a kernel level cheat where you're using, say, like a fake mouse. How many people are familiar with things like bad USB or like plugging in keyboards where code runs immediately on your computer maliciously? Yeah. So using that same idea, you really want this plug and play aspect of these mouses to like immediately run whatever code it needs to use on the computer. And so you can basically do the same thing by plugging in fake mouse, but it's also now doing kernel level stuff with whatever game that you're trying to bypass. Now, all these things are way harder and are way more high skill sets. So like the only tools that I listed for this one are just straight up experience. Like if you're actually trying to do creating anti-cheat or bypassing anti-cheat, you really need a ton of experience in kernel development, exploitation, and more if you want to get really into that stuff. Things have come a long way in a short period of time with this, so there's a ton that you need to know on that. And there's definitely not enough time to go into all of it in this talk. This is sort of what I was talking about. Most modern ones, probably the most respected of the anti-cheat providers right now is Vanguard, which is from Riot, who make Valorant and League of Legends. Runs as a kernel mode anti-cheat and is able to like ban people from doing very sophisticated hacks and external cheats, internal cheats, and especially these kernel level ones as well. Any other thoughts, questions before we move off of the anti-cheat? Yeah.
Yeah, did you mention something about how the external cheating can be detected? Because it seemed, as you were saying, like these two we can can't, so we have to go into the kernel, like it's.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what about external cheating, how is that detected by the game?
Yeah, and good question. So a lot of the ones with permissions like this, they'll be able to identify, okay, what are all of the processes running on your system? And so if it's running as an external cheat, you've not injected anything, therefore it's its own other process where it can say like, oh, I see cheat engine running. I'm just gonna say anyone running cheat engine we're not letting you, play the game. You often won't get banned for it because, I think that there's, but I've had, either Binary Ninja or some other type of tool up while playing a game and because I just forgot to close it, I was, maybe doing it like some other reverse engineering project. And so like they recognize that, but they'll probably not let you like continue or play the game, but you probably won't get banned. Does that make sense? Ooh. That's. That, I think that the internal cheats are often maybe some of the easiest, but they identify like the hooking structure for, if their process is hooked and being manipulated, they identify that. In terms of the actual, why this is so important and why the arms race happens, like it's just games, who cares? I think is the way that a lot of people think about it, but there's a lot of huge amount of stuff that goes into these tournaments. Like there was an Apex Legends tournament that I think that was $2 million prize pool or something like that, in which someone was they thought that someone was cheating, and instead what had actually happened is a remote person was able to hack into that live game that they had and make it look like he was cheating. Like they gave the person aimbot and he didn't even know what was happening. And that completely dissolved this sort of like very expensive highbrow tournament. And this happens in a lot of different things. This one in particular was a funny instance. I think it was in CSGO maybe, where this guy's an professional Indian player who was caught so hard live cheating that like this other administrator had to come up to his computer during like a live stage game and was trying to like look to see what open processes existed. And the guy's like trying to close them in front of him. There's a video of it that I think is really funny. But these problems are extremely pervasive and they'll only get more as the prize pools for these things go up. The money's involved, people are gonna cheat. It happens in sports, there's no reason it shouldn't happen in games. And it's way easier to cheat in games because there's a lot more complication going on. So in terms of the anti-cheat arms race though, the biggest problem is that like now you're installing kernel code drivers onto your computer that can do anything that they want. And so if you're, in security or privacy, this is not a good thing. You don't want this other system that completely having entire control of your computer. And do you really trust the developer that's doing it? Do you trust them to also not be breached in some way and maliciously put other versions of their kernel code onto your computer? By breaching that other, like let's say Vanguard for this instance, if Vanguard gets breached and a malicious version of it is put out there and distributed to everyone else's systems, they're thereby breached everyone else from a kernel level in a short amount of time. So it's super scary potentially. And they might be doing something about it lately. There's kind of like a mixed opinion on the thoughts there. So what can you do as a cheat developer? If you sign your own cheat driver, you can do that, but a lot of things won't accept that. You can abuse, like I said, vulnerable sign drivers, so things that are already signed by Microsoft that have a vulnerability, you can effectively run code by doing that. And we talked about the mouse and keyboard driver things before. So it's a complicated problem that doesn't have really great solutions because you need to be able to have the highest level of privilege in order to prevent these cheaters from doing this stuff. But even with that, now you're violating a lot of privacy and like concerns about what people are able to do with their computers. So there's not really a great solution right now. I think that the idea going forward is hopefully that eventually someone like Microsoft will create centralized onboard processes in which you can identify heuristics of cheating that are reportable within its own system instead of having to rely on things like Vanguard and whatnot to run on the kernel level. Okay, and even more appropriately for anti-cheat here, who remembers the CrowdStrike situation that happened? Yes, so that actually might have pretty significant impacts on anti-cheat as well, because as I was mentioning, there might kill some of that stuff, and this CrowdStrike situation was a kernel level process that was running. and it really just showed the impact of what happens if that gets flubbed in any way. It wasn't even necessarily malicious in this case, but it still resulted in like billions and billions of dollars of damage. And so now there's a big spotlight being put on, kernel level code and, the fact that maybe it shouldn't be done at all. So perhaps there's an avenue for Linux now to have, a route where that's not a problem at all. Okay, so on to the memory hacking side of things. This one's pretty easy because you can really just fire up Cheat Engine, attach it to any process you want, and look through the memory of that. And it's the first lab section, if we are able to do that, we'll be predominantly using just Cheat Engine just to see how easy it is. Who's used Cheat Engine before? Anyone? One person?
I think I used Cheat-O-Matic back in the 1990s. I don't know if it's the same thing.
I'm not sure. I know that there was what was the mobile one is like Game Shark or something like that, where it effectively did that. But yeah, if you haven't tried it before, it's so easy and simple and applicable way outside of the game space, right? Because you're just modifying your computer's internal memory. Those bytes are there, you can change them. So it has the ability to do stuff really easily, really fast. And what's useful here to know is that this is really impactful for offline games specifically, right? Like if it's an offline game, the entirety of that game's control is under your ability to influence. If it's not, there's sort of a server authoritativeness that can occur where even if you've changed a value and you report that value to the game server is like, well, no, you were just over here. You can't all of a sudden tell me that you're over there. So it'll deny some things like that. But in a completely offline game, this is really, really easy pickings for anyone to do anything with. But we'll get into more of it very soon. So those were the pillars for the different ones and more information about why each of them are important. The actual DEF CON CTF that we created, we wanted to bring a village to DEF CON about game hacking. Technically this year it was a community, which is a new thing that they're trying, where it's you're pre-village because it's too new and small. I think that we showed them this year that through the popularity and everything that we received on it, that it'll be more of an official village next year, I'm guessing. But in terms of this small stature for it, we can only realistically bring things in the concept of one CTF. The CTF had different components to it, and so it was really awesome to engage those different pillars and thoughts with everyone. But it was basically just one CTF for this year. And that components for that were the Unity game, which we'll get into soon, a thing that was run as the official DEF CON CTF, I think in 2008, which is a game called Pwn Adventures 3, Pwn Island. There's a guy named Live Overflow who does a really excellent series on exploiting Pony Island 3. And so we put this as part of our CTF, but we did basically monkey patch the binary so that all of the flags were different, so that you couldn't just take the flag from a video. You still had to actually do the hack. And again, this was all in the manner of learning, but it was still difficult for some people. And then there was a custom sort of game maker game, which is a bit more of a eclectic. It's not Unity, not Unreal. The Pwn Adventures is Unreal Engine for what it's worth. So we wanted to give a third flavor of something to give people an idea of what it's like to hack Unity games, Unreal games, and then whatever else. And then we had a miscellaneous format, which was just a fun way to try to interact with other groups and villages. We had one that was based on pinball, you had to go to the pinball machines that were kind of next door and do something there. One with Cloud Village, where you had to go to Cloud Village and identify, there was a QR code that brought you to a Pac-Man game that you had to cheat at to win. So we had some pretty cool challenges throughout all of this. And I was really worried that we were going to get people coming there and saying oh, this is way too easy, or oh, this is all way too hard. And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that no one solved every single challenge, even though there were some industry professionals that were there the entire time and working throughout each night to crack these challenges. The top several teams here were all like neck and neck the entirety of the time they were there. But yeah, I think that it also wasn't too hard because anyone who was even brand new were able to, I think at least a couple of the people in our top 10 had never done any game hacking before. But they were dedicated and there all week, and so it was really cool to see them be able to do as much as they did. Why the Unity game for game hacking on this? I really like, there's this thing called Mono inside of how Unity puts out games, where it's basically a C# interpreted language where you can, if you compile a game and you decompile the game with something like dnspy, which hopefully we'll download soon, you can see the exact code that was written for it. And this is a common thing that you can do actually with any of these release games, especially within Unity. A lot of these games are running on Mono, which means that all of the code that you would put in there is literally accessible to anyone who downloads it. They've changed that to an extent where you can do IL2CP, which is intermediate language to C++. And you're not getting the exact code, but more of like what it compiled down to. But it's still basically, like reading the code that was written, but without maybe like the comments or the like little weird names that you give in variables. And I hate, has anyone done game development? Anyone? Yeah, some?
Yeah.
Have you used an Unreal or a Unity? Like if you use Unity, right, it's C#, it's coding. If you know coding, honestly, I think it's super easy. If you know coding, but if you don't, Unreal's really great, but it looks like this. This is like their blueprint system that they use, and it's a spaghetti shoestring nightmare in my opinion, and I want nothing to do with it. And I think a lot of people really enjoy that, and so to each his own, but I didn't want to do spaghetti shoestring stuff. See you later, guys.
See you.
So, yeah, absolutely. So I think the Unity game stuff is the most accessible and the most fun platform to do. Any questions while that's coming back? No.
Do you have to do it this way in Unreal, or can you code in Unreal?
You can, and so there's, this is the popular way, and I think no matter what you do, you are gonna have to do some amount of like blueprint stuff. But you can just write straight up C++ in Unreal, and I think that even it has a toggle for you to use C# now, because they wanted to like steal away some Unity business. But I can't with this spaghetti graphs. So we mentioned before that one of the things about an offline game is that everything is under your control, right? So what's tricky is that this Unity game that I created, in order for it to be able to exist offline for people to play it, I needed to be able to hide the flag in a way that people wouldn't be able to access. Otherwise, if you run a strings on the binary, you'll just get all of the actual data for it, all the flags. You search for the prefix of the flag, and now you have all the flags. So we can't have that. That obviously is something we want to avoid. So what to do? This is what I did. I think it was silly and hacky or whatever, but I thought I'd share what my process was with this. I had an invisible cube in every level of that game. It is then randomly rotated some amount on every axis. I then took the hash of that rotation vector and then used that as an encryption key for like really basic like AES cryptography stuff. And I was wondering, is that enough to like prevent these people from finding it? I also, took all of the variable names out and obfuscated it by just like minifying it, making a renaming a variable to A or a function to B so that it was confusing. And while the game was going on at DEF CON, no one cracked that encryption method, which is great because I wanted the game to feel like they had to do the actual game hacking part. However, afterward, and I have a link here for it, but if you wanna look at that at some point, someone put out an entire write-up, which is like several pages long of cracking that encryption and figuring out what's going on there. So eventually, long scale, obfuscation never works. But for the short-term win situation, you can do stuff like obfuscating it to make things hard for people to do. I'm generally not an obfuscation fan because you're basically just delaying the time and it's not a real method for security. But, you know, these game companies do it because it slows people down and makes it annoying, which makes you choose different targets. And now we've come to the first lab section that I wanted to do where we'll be able to maybe work on this game if everyone has computers to do it on. If there's like a majority of people who don't have it or don't want to do it as a live thing, we could try something else, but I think that it would be really cool for everyone to like get their hands dirty with Cheat Engine and these other tools to just see how easy it is and kind of have at the game. And I can go around and help people where possible, but I kind of want to understand engagement on what the vibe is on that before moving forward, because we can always try to do it a different way if we don't want to do this. So who wants to like do the actual walking through live the game and working on with the tools? I think this is mostly everyone, I think.
We don't need the windows, right?
Yeah, the Windows thing is difficult. So I have instead for those who don't have a Windows machine or don't want to do the challenge, I would say that there's the John Hammond YouTube video is about like as long as I was going to give for that anyway, so you can just watch the video. I think that it's silly, but I mean, I think he does a really good job explaining it and walks through the process as if you were doing it yourself. So does everyone have the game downloaded? Who does not have the game downloaded / cheat engine downloaded and needs help?
I'm in the middle of it.
You're in the middle of downloading it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I know that the network was kind of slow. Is it progressing or is it stuck? But if anyone needs help with it or whatever to get unstuck, let me know. But I think that it's a good opportunity for everyone to like just kind of work together and understand like how the thing works. Oh man, that is real slow. Wait, what is? Oh, you're downloading the Windows again. Yeah, that's gonna take a while.
We talked about this already, right? I clicked on this,
And it's that weird cloud file. But did you? So go on GitHub. Just do Cheat Engine. If you don't have Cheat Engine, it looks like there's a releases page on GitHub, and you can get it from there. Similar for DNSpy, but that's the second section.
so. You could.
So releases. Right here. Yeah, just click that first one. And then I think, yeah, wait, at the top, I think, that's just the source. Sorry, yeah, scroll down. Yeah, I guess for that release, you might just have to build it, but that's fine, you can download the zip and hopefully it actually builds, yeah. It might have the built version of it in there. I'll go look myself as well. So is everyone getting along fine with doing that? Yeah, hi. Yeah, how are you? Do you guys want to, what's that?
Yeah,
Oh, all of you back, so I mean, if most of the people aren't able to access it that way, we can,
I have a PC actually, so I will try.
okay, okay. But yeah, my backup plan, I was also just to show the. We can, but I think it's a little silly to just put the video on of it, I also am using a Mac. And so I, you know, wasn't ready for the demo gods to try to do that live. But what do people want? Should we like watch a quick video with it on there? Do we wanna try to like move on? Like, I'm fine, I wanted to make this as, you know, this is a small group, so we can kind of do whatever angle we want to here. Any opinions?
How about Windows VM?
I do not have a Windows VM. Cause I just got this computer recently, and I brought a different. I use my desktop, my Windows desktop for development. I might just, are people okay with me just like playing that video and just seeing through the walkthrough on that? Also gives me a chance to like rest my voice. So I'm gonna do that. And it would be cool if I walked through it myself, but honestly. I think that the production value and everything that he goes through is probably better than what I would have done for my own game. Does anyone have questions while I'm pulling this up?
Oh, I downloaded that zip that you suggested and just trying to open that in File Explorer, it's banging on me.
Yeah, I think that probably we'll do this for now. If I would still, we'll just watch the first one. For the other two, I would, you know, suggest that you go. You know, when you get back home to try out the other levels that way and see using the other tools that I was referring to. Do we have audio output for this? I might be able to just turn up my computer's volume.
Yeah,
It's also very hot.
I used to turn the, I used to turn it on, so. Maybe try the other one,
No, it was super warm.
okay,
Another one doesn't work.
okay.
But for those who were able to get up there, feel free to try to go through it while this is being played. I'm only gonna show the first one, then we can talk through the rest of it, but.
This string zip file was found in.
I heard something. Here we go.
It's in other videos, but this can.
Alright, y'all can see. Alright, we'll just go through this and feel free to work on it yourself if you have got the tools and everything, and then we'll continue on after this.
Be the very start and sort of the introduction to some game pattern. We will need to do a little bit of setup and get our environment ready at the start of this video, but we can go ahead and dive in by opening our web browser. I'm in a fresh Windows virtual machine, which is really recommended if you do some of the game
I'm gonna skip ahead to where he actually is.
start, and let's see this game in action. Here we. Yes, I've got I don't know, like a blue chiclet. You can see the instructions up here. Move is WASD. We can walk around just like that. Open our inventory with the letter I on our keyboard. And escape will likely close out of that if we don't have anything in our inventory right now. Look at this. And escape will also pause the game. We can resume the level that we're on or go back to level select or back to the game. No, I can just walk around, holding down shift, move a little bit faster, boom, like this. Dangerous to go alone. Take this if you can, anyway. So I have what looks like a gun here. Oh, that might have been a little bit loud. Hang on, let me turn down the turret over there, apparently in the top right, and trying to grab the gun. What looks like it just actually happens to turret fire some bullets at me and hurts Maya. Presumably the gun helped just as well, but that is the gist. What else do I do? They're just gonna kill me, right? Okay. I died. Of course, we can restart the level or get back to the main menu, and I think for now, it's worth us getting back to the guide and actually get an idea for what tools we might need, but now we're gonna need reference. If we get back to
if-
Microsoft Edge, I do wanna show you.
If anyone has like questions or thoughts or other things that they wanna ask while this is going on, just raise your hand, we can pause it real quick and chat.
Here, we have actually tried to take note of this because that CTF or capture the flag game board is no longer online. We have actually tried to make a little save copy of it over on GitHub, github.com/JHLLC, or John Hammond here. We've got a Unity-game repository that is public and you can go access it. So you'll be able to see the objectives for all of the different levels, as well as a little write-up and solution. Big shout out to my video editor, Norm Garrett here, one of our editors, who's always doing incredible stuff. And he's written all this up. And let me say that.
Yeah, he was one of the competitors for the game,
Like,
which is
just apparently
apparently why.
he's like cutting up mods and everything to Dark Souls and all this cool stuff that I want to learn a lot more. He notes though that he's reversing modern games. He'll generally use Cheat Engine and some kind of decompiler like Ghidra. In this case, C# assemblies are much easier to understand, and since we're in Unity, that's kind of where we'll be at in this case. So we will be using that Cheat Engine utility. We'll also dig into DNSpy, we'll do some code patching. We'll do that in another video because there are a lot of levels here, about 9 of them. But I'd like to cruise through the first couple, but here's a quick little showcase walkthrough of how you might be using DNSpy and also Cheat Engine to be able to get this stuff in action. I want to do the demo and showcase this all in the moment, but I do want to bring to your attention that this is a resource available to you. And the Unity CTF guide from gamehacking.gg in the website even mentions, look, hey, you could be using Cheat Engine as a suggested program to download, as well as DNSpy, Melon Loader, and some other sweet things.
If you get DNSpy, do DNSpy EX is the new one. The old actual DNSpy, in fact, the one that I have linked on the website right now is old. Is not like currently maintained. So DNSpy EX is what the
Cheat
new one is.
Engine, we know that we'll want that. And this is online at cheatengine.org and their downloads page. Let me go ahead and click that big button to download Cheat Engine. The latest version right now is 7.5. Make sure that you avoid all the ads that pop up and whine and complain and make a whole lot of noise here, but it'll automatically start downloading Cheat Engine 7.5, and that is the one that you want. Make sure you only get it from this website and not some sketchy malware, rat, whatever, just anywhere else on the internet. Now that that is downloaded, we can go ahead and open that downloads folder, double click on our Cheat Engine 75 installer here, and that'll get things ready. This will prompt with user account control. Obviously, you installing some software will need those administrator privileges. Being inside of a virtual machine, that is A-OK for us. So we'll go ahead and click yes, I do speak English. It will pop up, welcome to the Cheat Engine installer.
I'm gonna kill.
Yep, you don't need to install any of the fancy add-ons, AVG, antivirus crap. Look, click normally at the top. It used to be an option in older versions of Windows to just easily let you say, hey, keep this window on top.
Oh, one other thing that I want to point out, that if you end up doing this stuff at home, I highly recommend before you actually do stuff with the game, that you go through in Cheat Engine. There's a little tutorial thing inside of the menu itself where it kind of walks you through how to use the program. And it is very helpful, just sort of like baseband knowledge of using it in like very simple way before you actually try to use it on other programs.
All the time. Now, you might have to do this with some other utilities like Power Tools. That's the official one. That's coming from Microsoft. Microsoft Power Tools allows you to do a ton of stuff.
Just trying to get you to keep the window on the top if you don't have multiple screens.
It's gonna have administrator privileges while it yes there. But now, if I use that Control Windows T.
Sorry, I don't know how to actually, apparently it's way further into the video than I thought.
Please attach to it. Select that. You can see the sort of glowing box of the magnifier computer screen. The tooltip will tell us here, hey, that's how we can select a process to open. Now we can choose whatever program or process we might like, but of course, we want to drill down into our video game, that GamehackerGG application that's open. So let me click that to open it. And now this is kind of really cool. we'll actually go start the game here and get into the first level. I'll get Cheat Engine back open and use that Control Windows T trick to make sure that is always on top. Now I can move around and see both of these, but let me talk about this for a little bit because we want to go grab that gun, right? But we don't have enough health. So can we manipulate our health variable? That counter looks like 100 over on the top. And this is the whole idea behind Cheat Engine. It's honestly really, really cool. It's saying like, look, when you're playing a video game, you've got your health, you've got your ammo, or you've got all these values that maybe you want to tweak and tune, but they are things that will change as the game progresses. So what you can do is you can sort of take a snapshot and say, look, right now, I know that I have 100 as my value for health. So let me scan through and look through all of the computer memory and try to find what address or what location that value maps to. And we want to narrow it down by changing or decreasing that value, like purposefully getting hit or getting hurt and decreasing our health value, so that we can now scan again and go find, okay, what actual addresses changed along with it. And let me show you that, right? Look, let's say we're going to end up looking for writable memory, because of course that health variable, that value will change. So it's got to be able to be modified, in which case it is writable. We don't need to look for executable though, so we do want to make sure writable is checked, but executable is not in this case. We want to look for a value like 100, because we know that's the health value we're looking for. And we want to specify a scan type. Exact value is probably what we're really looking for right now, but of course you can change the condition to something bigger than, smaller than a given value, value between, and whatever. The value type is especially important though, because this is the sort of structure, the type of data that is stored in memory, right? You might be familiar with maybe a D word, like a 32-bit number that's stored on some processors, computer memories and all, right? And this can vary. This can value between float, double, strings, array of bytes. But look, in our case, let's just look for all. So with all that out of the way, let's start our first scan to try to find the memory address of our health, that value there. We know right now it starts at 100. So I'll enter that, looking for the exact value with all value types, and let me click first scan. You can see it tries to load and look at all this at the very top, and you'll see a ton of bound addresses, just about 7,000 of them. So that's not super duper helpful, right? That's a whole lot to dig through. Let me actually
There's a lot of
expand
things,
this out so you
a lot of
can see
memory in
what
your
we're
computer.
all the addresses here, like the hexadecimal, zeros, 4DB, 3M, whatever, all that on the left-hand side. Look, we don't need to drill down into all that right now, because we can get a little bit sharper and smarter when we take a next scan. When we try to see, okay, if we were down to intentionally get hurt, what does that value look like as it changes? So let me go walk over to the gun, and remember the turret over on the top right. I know Cheat Engine is in the way, you can't really see it. But if I were to now intentionally bump into this and change my health to 90, as you can see, let's start another next scan, 90. I'll click that button in next scan, and ooh, take a look. That has narrowed down all of that to this one single address, because the value was 90, it was first 100. So let me double click on this value, and that'll be added down below. And if we were to now double click on this, we could change the description if we wanted to say, okay, maybe that is our health, maybe, that's fine. Let's go ahead and hit okay. Now I can change manipulate that value, right? Could I double click on that? Yeah, let me change that value back to what? Hit okay, and boom. You see that? Right over on the left-hand side, our value, our actual health changed to 100. So that's interesting. Could I go back?
And I think like this is a very simple game that I made specifically for this. And so a lot of other games have a lot of bells and whistles inside of it to where that it might not be as obvious that it was that value. For instance, your actual health that you would have in a game might be 100, and the value displayed on the UI element might also be 100, but you don't know which thing under the hood is your real health value versus just like the display or some other value which is derived off of that same 100 value. Does that make sense?
The game and kind of bump into this again, and oops, okay, I'm back to 90. But what if I could just lock the health? Like, we could just set that to some crazy high number, we could manipulate it, do whatever we wanted to with that value, like it could be elite, 1337, but I wanna make that locked to a given value that I'll specify. We set it to this, but if I click this checkbox for active, now I will no longer be able to take damage. It should actually freeze that value. So let's go try it out. Let me move Cheat Engine over to the side and let me go bump into the gun. Once, ooh, I got hit. You can see the turret fired, but my health went down to like 1327 for maybe one frame, but now brought right back up to 1337. And the gun is still using its own health value. You can see that going down over and over and over again. So this is it. This is all that we needed to do to log our health value and do that with Cheat Engine. Take a look, you can see the flag is present there. Let me minimize Cheat Engine so I can go grab this flag. We will need to jump with the space bar to go get it. And now I've got a gun. I don't think that's something I would ever say in any of their usual videos on this channel. And I click to shoot. Oh yeah, okay, goodness, I can. Move my face for a little bit, because you can see just down below in the bottom right, it'll show the ammo counter. Like if I click one more time to fire, that's decreasing. So I wonder what level 2 might be. Let's go now try to get our flag and move on to level 2. Pop down here. And
Does anyone have any questions on just like the really basic version of how that works or what's happening there? No. I would say that one thing that's important to know also, I don't know if he actually covers this during the review here, but whenever you're putting values in like that, he saved that value within Cheat Engine and now he's able to reference it later. However, if your character dies, or let's say you brought up the game again and you wanted to like retain that value of like that health forever, you would not actually end up getting the same value. As the program is loaded in, it's loaded dynamically into a different address space, depending on what's available on your computer. And because of that, if it's not guaranteed to load into the same space, you have no idea like where it's going to show up. And so you can still retain a history of usable values, but you have to use pointers and like basically a pointer to a pointer to a pointer sometimes. Because what will happen is like the game exists and it's loaded into like some memory. The offsets in which the health for that is loaded into will remain the same, even if it's in a different place in memory. So your game knows like, oh, here's the base of the game, here's where the character value offset is from that, here's where the health offset is from that, and you can basically map that out inside of Cheat Engine. There are some tools to automate this as well, and that gives you insight on like being able to have that permanently. Unless of course the developer like gives an update and it shifts everything and you'll have to do it again.
now we are at level 2. Oh geez, okay, what is that thing? Let's pause the game with the escape key and go figure out what our next task is. And by the way, if you are looking through Nordgaren's write-up and solution here, it walks through everything that we have done and just as well.
Yes, so the guy who's the video editor for this made a much better guide for how to actually solve the game than I made for my game. So I replaced my entire guide with his. And if I have the link for it in the deck, which I don't know if we're sending out the deck or.
We can put it on the on Discord,
Yep.
or you can send me the information.
Perfect, so the links in the deck also, that he also explains in the video, so if you wanna go through the process with that.
First scan, it's your next scan as we toggle that, as we're exploring, bringing these down to the address list. But with that, we'll go ahead and actually see the flag that we got. And said, hey, this is the first flag that moved. That was in our inventory. We actually opened up with letter I. But really, I'm not too concerned with the flag value themselves. I just want to be able to learn how to use Cheat Engine and to know a little bit more about this whole game hacking world. So level 2, we have to kill the Unicorn Rat. The Unicorn Rat has enough HP to absorb all of your bullets. If only there was a way to have infinite bullets. Okay, so back in our game, we can see that, we can start the fight with the Unicorn Rat. Okay. I like the dialogue up here. Oh, geez. Oh, that'll kill me. That'll attack me for sure. I am out of bullets. Okay, so that's the problem, right? We need more bullets. Let me try to restart this level. Let me hit escape, restart level. And I actually want to start a new scan with Cheat Engine. So let me click new scan right up here and kind of reset, get us back to a blank canvas. Let me move myself to the other side of the screen so you can see our ammo counter down on the bottom right. But now that we have kind of that general idea, the gist, how to use Cheat Engine, let's try that process again to track down our ammo. It might not be as easy, but let's try it. We just want to look for a value of 10 in this case, right? So let's start a first scan if we were trying something new like we did. And you'll see, okay, all of the addresses that I'm looking for, there are a heck of a lot of them. My goodness. And let's see if we can
56,000.
now fire the gun. Over here, that value has changed down to 9. Whoops, I think I accidentally hit D all that time in the input box. So we'll enter 9 here, try to do a next scan. And we're still looking for writable memory, by the way. Like, we have not removed that checkbox. We aren't looking for executable because, look, it's just modifying that ammo counter as we start to shoot and fire. So let me hit the next scan and see, can we narrow that down? Oh, geez, just about 12,000.
He doesn't show this in the video, but I think that there was a point in which he was doing this, and something you should be aware of if you're using Cheat Engine or any in-memory editing software. You are editing like potentially very important like memory if you don't choose the right thing. And that, for instance, when he was doing it at one point, his system just completely shut down. I don't think he put it in the video at all, but I know that he posted a video of him working on this in which that happened. So just know that if you're not sure what thing you're modifying, it might result in your system crashing. It's not going to do permanent damage, but you should know that that can happen.
All right, let's do it again. I shot the value, let's change that to 8. To next scan. Okay, do it a little bit more. Let's bring it down even further. Let's get to 7. Hit next scan. There we go. We're down to double digits, at least now 10. And let's keep that process going. 6. Oh shoot! I actually goodness, I shot the unicorn goose wrap thing and it killed me. We did narrow this down though to about 3 different memory addresses, so we could explore those, kind of take a look. But do any of those match? Well, I guess they all match the criteria thus far, but we aren't sure which of those are actually RM. And I don't know if that will change or reset if we're to start a new round. So let's try to restart the level and then see.
But this goes back to what I was saying, where like, if you're actually doing this stuff on an enterprise level game or like something a lot more sophisticated, you're probably not gonna be able to narrow stuff down doing this as easily as you could in this situation. And when that happens, like some people might be tempted to, oh, let's change all the values, like these 100 values to like 0. Like you probably don't want to do that unless you know what's happening there. But some clues that you can have are about the actual address itself. If you look and there's a control to browse memory within a particular region, if you see that things are like familiar, and if you do this enough, you don't understand what I mean. But if you look in that region, then you're like, oh, I see a string that's probably my name. I see like a value that could be like this inventory thing. Then you might be in a good place. If you go to a memory region and you're seeing stuff change all the time, you probably are looking at something different. And like the address spaces are laid out contiguously, so a program loading in one area, you might want to like try to stay or only scan within that program range, even though he's scanning all viable memory on his system.
Hey, can we monitor any of these addresses? Let me select all of them. I'm holding down Shift. If I drag them into our memory view, does that work? It does. Now I can right click each of these and then try to add them to a group. Down at the very bottom, you see that add to new group. We can call that ammo, maybe. And okay, do you want address version? No, I don't think we do. We just want a plain raw group. So let me experiment here. Can I just change this value to like 15, would enter on that? Well, I don't see our ammo count change. And remember, we have kind of a variable here that we aren't accounting for, and that we restarted the game. We restarted the level, so that memory address
Definitely not there.
might actually be what we think it is. Obviously, we saw our ammo change to 10 when we restarted the game. It wasn't 6, we started with within Cheat Engine. So, okay, looks like this was a bad call, but that was worth our learning. Let's go ahead and remove that whole group, and with that, we'll start again. So remember that process, we'll start a new scan. Let me actually get a new level going. I'll restart here, and let's walk through this once again. That's okay, no harm, no foul. We're just trying to practice here. Let's start a first scan value of 10, and let's do that process again.
The biggest thing that I think a lot of people do when they're looking for values here from a first timer mistake is that he has value type all, which you can do, there's just gonna be a lot of results. If you can narrow down that value type, it can be really helpful. For instance, in that first one, even though he was value type all, most people would look for 4 bytes. Technically, the way that works under the hood is the health ends up being a float, so it wouldn't actually have been found under that. Similarly, in later ones, which, you know, for time purposes, we probably won't get into, but like location, can be, instead of a float, which would be assumed potentially, is actually a double, so that it's more accurate. So just making sure that you know what value types you're looking for, and if you don't see what you're looking for, consider maybe you're looking for the wrong value type.
So.
Yeah.
Is he scanning whole Windows memory or just memory of game?
Yeah, he's scanning, if you see here, he's scanning everything from all zeros to also all like writable space that programs would be executing within. You can narrow that down to like what your program is, but you might not know what that is, and some programs also might be loading up multiple different things within memory in different places. So the only, I'm not saying that you necessarily should adjust where it's scanning, but rather when you're looking at the results, try to see if that's within space that you think is part of your game from. If you do it enough, you kind of get a sense for like, oh, this is way outside of like the ranges that all the other things that I saw were, so this is maybe not right.
So it should be basically close to his health, right?
It should, yeah, if he goes to something like this address, like we know that he got this from ending health. If this was the same run of the program and you saw other things that were prefixed with like 141, it's a pretty good sign that he's in the right place, or like looking at that region in which the game is loaded.
Again, next scan as it goes down to 9, et cetera, et cetera. Can I change the value here to 15? Okay, that doesn't make the change, and I don't know exactly what those could be, right? There are 3 values that change. Maybe they're like rendering in the UI or the user interface some way, somehow. How about this? Can I shoot? Does that work? Oh, that one did. Wait a second, which of those work? That was.
That's the other problem with doing them all at the same time. You have no idea what to change.
To fire the gun and validate that, okay, the change will be made. Let me change this top value to 20 and then try to fire. Nope, brings us down to 12. Let's change this value to 20. Nope, that brings us down to 11. So
As you can see that he's modifying these ones and then like shooting, and then it's dropping it back down to the original value, which makes it seem like it didn't do anything. It technically wrote to that part of the memory correctly, but what's happening is that like there's one sort of source of truth value, which is basically just being replicated amongst other things, and so it's being immediately overwritten by the program that thinks it's something else. And so that little value that he's changing might not have like any importance within the running of the program, even though it has that value. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Address, thanks to our deductive reasoning here, probably is our actual area. Let me go ahead and enter like quad 9, whatever, over 9,000. And now we can actually try to go beat up the unicorn round. Let me keep beating him up. WTF is your problem? Oh, that's fun. You are dead. Except we could kill it. Nice. Let's go grab that flag. Hello? Okay, I can jump. And now that should be added into our inventory. So let me press I on my keyboard and we can see, hey, there it is. There is our unicorn flag. That is, oops, sorry, Mr. Unicorn.
And then when I was talking about the decryption thing and the encryption of obfuscation, realistically, of these flags, whenever you pick up the flag and put it in your inventory is when that encryption function runs. Otherwise, until that happens, it's basically just encrypted data that's hard to read unless you crack it, which I would encourage you to read the write-up of how they did that, because I think it's interesting to know how obfuscation doesn't really help.
I like that infinite ammo, infinite power. Don't forget, we could have just locked that value or frozen it by clicking that little check box. Sweet. Let's go back to our game and let's get to level 3. Unicorn Rap says, I'm back, you jerk. Let's see you get to me now. Okay, he has a shield. We can't as easily shoot, right?
This is basically more of the same as on the last level. So, you know, combining the concept that you have infinite ammo and infinite health you can basically wedge your way in there and shoot them. In theory, you could get a little bit more crafty with it if you wanted. If you can find the value of that shield, for instance, you can delete the shield entirely from the game. That's a little bit more nuanced and harder to do. So we'll, pause on that. Also, I'm about to be out of battery. It looks like, but. Yeah, just steal, I don't know. If USB-C. I'll just take this one too. So I won't go through the other two, like videos that he had put up for the other levels, but I just wanted to give like a base sense for, thank you. A base sense for like, that was the cheat engine. You can technically do, I think, every level with cheat engine if you really wanted to. But for the other ones, for levels 4 through 6, I recommend like getting comfortable with DNSpy and seeing how much, while the levels get harder, the tooling that's supporting like recommendation of doing it becomes easier. So once cheat engine's like decently easy to use, DNSpy makes things really, really easy because you can for, as we mentioned, mono and for IL2CPDP, you can take stuff and decompile the logic within that and literally just change the logic to whatever you want, recompile the game, and now you have like the code that does whatever you want. And if you watch the other videos where he covers it, he does exactly that, where he goes in and changes the function to just like give you the flag instead of like going through a complicated series of seeing if you have certain requirements met. So that's really cool. Definitely recommend checking out DNSpy, and DNSpy X is the current maintained one. Melon Loader and Unity Explorer is an awesome combo where Melon Loader is basically like a modding loading tool, but you can load a mod called Unity Explorer, which is like sort of the matrix mode of using a game where you can just look at a particular object and it's like, oh, here's that object, here's all of its attributes and values, here's the code that's running behind it, and you can change it all. So it's really awesome to just like load that up into like whatever your favorite Unity game is. Mine by far is on the right, which is Outer Wilds. I don't know, has anyone played Outer Wilds? All right, that's your actual homework. Forget everything I said before, go play Outer Wilds. It's a really fantastic little game, and the less you know about it before going into it, the better. But you can load up stuff like this to just kind of get that Matrix Goggles version of it and edit, change whatever you want to. I think it's really awesome and a good way to explore and learn. There were 2 other levels that were part of that a lot of people didn't notice. If you actually did a strings on the binary of that game, there is another flag that's in there that isn't decrypted, just to reward those who actually tried it. And then lastly, there's a 10th level that some people didn't recognize, but if you use something like Unity Explorer or whatnot, it allows you to custom load a list of all the different, they're called scenes, but levels basically. And there's one called level 10, but it's not linked anywhere else in the game. So you'd have to be able to use something like that to load it separately. There's a guide for that. That person that made the video for it, definitely worth looking at. So that was all of Unity. There's a couple more things that I wanted to share before we're done here, but on the Unreal side of things, the hacking Unity and Unreal in terms of like development of cheating and everything is very different. And that's just because of the nature of the engines in which they're developed upon. Right, so Unreal for a lot of the stuff that I would recommend in general is that you have what are called dumpers, which I think that's such a strange word that they use for that, but so they're all dumpers, and effectively they're trying to do something similar where you can get all the objects out from the game and adjust them in different ways. There's 2 main ones that are worth like looking into. There's one from a group called Guided Hacking, which I'll mention a little bit later. And then one from an open source one on GitHub from, I think, Spugwaffles, I guess how you pronounce that. But they're both great. I think that you might have to be a member for guided hacking to use theirs. But it has a pretty strong feature that the more typical one does not, which I will talk about here. So when you're looking at reversing Unreal games, there's a lot more of this like reversing concept that you need to have at play. And you know, one of the main things for this is that it's going to be completely dependent on what the Unreal version is. And their source code is actually open source, but you have to associate your email address with them and like sign up, basically connecting whatever game you're playing. Like I think that the account that you're using there with your GitHub account. And once you've done that, they allow you access to see the code for it. And that's really helpful because when you're reversing a game, you will go in and see basically a decompiled version of the actual engine because it has to be there and present. And so when you're looking at new ones, you have to see, okay, you need in Unreal, there are a couple of offsets that are really important. Those are GWorld, GObjects, and GNames. The really high level version of this is that GWorld is sort of like an array of objects that is like where all of the actual address values are for whatever game you're playing. So you need to know what that offset is from the base game in order to do stuff with it. And the way that you find that is by reverse engineering it and looking around to see what is familiar within the context. So this is the actual newest version, I believe, of Unreal on the right. I actually just grabbed this recently. And I noticed here that there's like a quote, which is hard to see, so I ignored it there. And so you see like seamless travel, flush level streaming. I have no idea what that means, but I know it's near the thing that I want at the top, which is that GWorld equals loaded world. And so when you're in Binary Ninja or IDA or whatever, you can go in and identify, all right, here is that string and the reference to it. And if you look up the instructions a while, you'll eventually find, because none of these labels are in there, right? This is all gonna be like V136 and like it's gonna look like a nightmare. But you can find the offset if you like look around areas in which you're expecting something like a string is the easiest thing to look for. So that's how you have to think about that. And in order for that open source one on GitHub, the dumper, to use that, you need to manually supply the GWorld offset, the GObjects, and the GNames in order for any of this to work. The reason that the guided hacking one is really cool is because it automates some of that process for you for most versions. So something to think about if you're wanting to like try that out. I think it's really interesting, but it is a little bit more complicated. It also allows you to provide a decryption function for if the developer encrypted the actual names and variables and the stuff that they're using, you'd have to supply that function as well. So in terms of like some learning resources for what's you know, my recommendation for what to look at if we want to continue on with some of this. Guided hacking, it's an interesting organization. The founder guys is great, but I think that I would warn you that if you're going to that site, it might come off a little bit crazy on the site, and that's because he has to deal with so many different like people scraping the site and cheating. The cheating community is not like a great group of people, which is why I want to segment myself away from cheating and more on the learning side of things. But yeah, it's a great, really great resource for just like getting your start on it. They have really good courses for getting there. I think that they're doing like a 20% off thing right now if you're interested in that. And I think that 20% off actually comes with that Squally game. So slight pitch for them. They also did sponsor us for our DEF CON event. You can go to gamehacking.gg, which is our website, to learn more of what we're doing in the future there. And you know the Cheat Engine and DNSpy resource that we talked about before. For the next DEF CON, we're really hoping to like kind of expand things and do more like talks within the community. So I think there's a lot of ability to like anytime there's a game hacking type talk at DEF CON, it ends up being really popular but no one ever ends up doing more than just that sort of talk. And I think that there's a ton that could be talked about there that would be really exciting. Also developing stuff like hardware hacks or like mod controllers, I think that those are things outside of my expertise, but I'm hoping to get some more people in to do stuff like that. And I'm aiming for the skies on a lot of these, like I'm gonna see if I can't get Grand Theft Auto 6 or something in at the conference to do like public bug bounty for them, which I think would be an awesome win-win for both. So that's the types of stuff that we're expecting for the next one. I also might be bringing some of this to GDC, and then just little special projects here and there, including, potentially trying to make a company out of this to do something more commercial. But that's pretty much it. We have a Discord community that is available on the website, and you can check out more on gamehack.gg.
Sorry, complete Discord community, I didn't go anywhere.
Oh no? Okay, I'll work on that and try to fix that. The invite link for it might have expired. But does anyone have any other questions or thoughts or comments, whatever? Yeah.
You describe like in general, how it usually works. You run your playing game and you run your cheat engine beside, or you just like figure out where all the health is and you change binary of the game so next time, or how this like
So when you're
workflow.
when you're running the stuff like what you were seeing in the video there, you have Cheat Engine up, it's attaching to a process and then just reading that memory. And it's only reading that stuff at runtime, like it's memory, it's not your hard drive, right? So it's only changing what's happening in runtime, basically. And yeah, you basically would have them up side by side so that they're able to interact with the game and interact with the memory separately. Oftentimes, I would recommend if you have two monitors set up, you have one on one monitor, one on the other.
And why people do this?
Because it's fun.
Well, I would imagine like how somebody could not pass the one level, then okay, let's just cheat with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it, right, is that I think that there's two schools of thought. One is like cheating to gain competitive advantage, which like I'm not a big fan of that. I think like play the game as it's meant to be done. But I think that the learning aspects of like understanding how the game functions, how you can change it, how to make it your own. That's why to me, the modding component of it is like the most interesting, but uses a lot of the same ideas and topics. But I think that all of the different pillars of those things are valid and stuff that we want to support. But yeah, good question. Yeah.
So for like consistent speed runs, there are these like similar tools that they use, or is that all different?
Yeah, so the question is tool assisted speed runs. I think that like there are versions of doing speed runs where they're like no glitch, no cheats or whatever, in order to make that happen. But there are ones, like you mentioned, in which you can do whatever you want to like, there are so many popular examples in games where like natural cheats or glitches exist to make something happen. But if you really want to get super into the tool assisted version of it, you can technically like make a tool that probably triggers the in-game cut screen immediately instead of like going through any of it. So it's kind of a hard balance on like where the actual limit is on what you're able to do there.
But I mean, maybe using these like cheat engines to do those things.
They might use Cheat Engine or other tools similarly to figure out how it's working. Like for instance, you can use Cheat Engine and these other tools to find those like, did anyone ever play like Mario 64? Or I'm trying to come up with like a concept that's like a common one that people would know that like there was like, and this exists in a lot of games where you jump a particular way and it like shoots you into a different direction for who knows why. But you can use like fuzzing and stuff like this to identify where those natural glitches exist. And they will use that to sometimes find those instead of just brute forcing until someone's like, hey, one time I jumped over here and I flew that way. It's a lot easier to like automate that. But yeah, good question. Yep.
Does Windows intentionally offer functionality that a process can attach to another process
Yeah,
and read all the memory and change it freely?
absolutely. So the question again is that how does Windows offer the ability to help sort of that process attachment and process communication? And yeah, that's the fully expected version of all the things that are happening within here, like the cheat engine stuff that we're talking about, all these other things, they're using the Windows API for communicating on this stuff, like from the actual back end of how these things are working, they're just leveraging existing calls within the Windows API to make this happen. So like it is very much an intentional part of how Windows works and how like you need to be able to inject inside of processes and read memory from other programs for a number of different reasons. They're just leveraging that in a way that is just like good for this. But yeah, great question. It's very much part of what is expected from Windows.
So I joined your session later, slightly, so apologies if you.
No worries.
If I would like to say start a video game company, what would be like the recommended architecture for my game to kind of minimize like all this hacking? Like, for instance, have you seen this concept of like streaming video games, like something like NVIDIA, like you remotely play your game and they only give you like basically a browser and
Yeah,
the whole thing, will that like stop cheating or reverse engineering games?
it's not gonna stop like all cheating for sure, because even in the games in which you are streaming and you don't have, you're not running the game locally, so you can't like modify memory or whatever, but you can still modify what your network traffic looks like. So you could effectively load an application in the middle of you talking directly to the game server. You have something in the middle there that's taking the packets that you send out and like modifying them in a way that's advantageous to you. Like if you're playing poker, maybe you're sending out packets that identify like how many chips you have, what you're doing with it. You can still modify stuff like that. It might cut down on it a little bit because it's harder to see what the source code and the reversing of the games are. But I think that there's always going to be a new way to cheat or figure out how. And even I would say that someone's going to get access to it, and if less people have eyes on it, the more insecure it typically ends up being. So it's hard because at least whenever it's in front of everyone gets to look at it, and no one knows how to fix it because you're doing like security through a large number of eyes, as opposed to like sort of almost obfuscating it by not having it available. But it's a good question. Any other questions? Is you good?
I guess I have one more,
Yeah.
like and maybe you already mentioned it, but like for companies that, like I will assume there is this big industry of reverse engineering for gaming, like I mind like companies like Rockstar Games or big AAA games, that they have like hundreds of reverse engineering doing this, like what are the tools they use to basically don't duplicate work, like sharing the offset, like
Yeah.
sharing findings, stuff like that.
This is a very good question because I think this is what happens with anti-cheat a lot, which is that everything's super hush hush because no one wants. They all want to have anti-cheat, especially like their secret sauce is their ability to detect cheaters. So they're very unincentivized to share those techniques and concepts with other people because like if they have the ability to detect some type of thing or ban a certain type of thing, it's gonna be way better for them as a company, an image, product. They want to be able to say like, yeah, they don't catch any of this stuff, we catch all of it. So they're very much black boxes when it comes to public information sharing and like attacks. Do they have a lot of people that are doing it? Yes, maybe there's some like backroom deal things that are happening where like people talk about it, but it's very much under like cloak and dagger instead of out there in the open for everyone to see. They do a lot of competitive intelligence as well, where they'll like invade these cheating communities and identify like what's working, what's not working. Recently, I think Vanguard did a ban wave of things where they identified a hardware cheat that I think on the actual hardware module, there was like a particular Wi-Fi driver, and it was such a weird eclectic Wi-Fi driver that like no one ever used, and that hardware cheat that a lot of people were using all had that same Wi-Fi driver like heuristic, and so they just banned every single person with that Wi-Fi, I remember, because they were like, well, 90% of these people are cheaters. And the 10% that aren't will like do case by case basis, right? So they have to do really weird hacky stuff to like make it fair.
And I know that sometimes they man your actual hardware equipment, right?
Yes.
You cannot.
Yeah, they tie it to your hardware ID.
Yeah, that's.
But that's new, like this is very like novel, and that only a couple of people are doing that right now, so it's still super cat and mouse.
They cannot even sell it on eBay anymore.
Yeah.
You won't be able to play it.
Cool. Last questions? Alright, well, thank you very much for your time, it's been fun.
Cool. Yeah, no, thank you so much for joining us today and for accepting the invitation to join us. I mean, this is great, and I mean, we have the conference coming up, so if you have something in mind to do something for the conference, you know, please.
Yeah.
Use it as a playing ground, you know, to launch the next big thing, so, yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for coming. I know, I think you had some, issues and you probably never wasn't able to make it, but you did it, so I really appreciate that. So with that, I'll see you guys next month. We have the upcoming meetup in October, and then, yeah, and so gonna be a workshop. And then also, the conference in November 2nd, so, grab your tickets. And yeah, so with that, thank you, man, appreciate it, thank you for coming. And also, I did forgot to mention, especially since you're in San Francisco, so we're gonna outgrow our meetups. Long story short, for people who haven't been here for the first time, we started in the South Bay, about 8 years ago. That was a reason for it, because there were a lot of security meetups in San Francisco, so we didn't want to really compete with them. There was nothing in South Bay. After the pandemic, a lot of those groups left and we stayed. And now every time, we have something, people contact us, like, when are you coming to San Francisco? What is there and stuff like that? And well, the answer is yes, we're going to start doing meetups in San Francisco. We're working on the details to get places where we can host the meetups and make it just like this, more have the flexibility where when we have a meetup, we just go there and divide it around.
Don't abandon this place, okay?
Pardon me?
Don't abandon this.
Oh, no, this is home. Yeah, no, this is not.
Long drive.
Yeah, no, of course. So, chances are that a lot of the stuff, because again, a lot of the people that are here or in the South Bay don't go to San Francisco and vice versa. So potentially we're gonna start doing twice a year, so maybe I'll ping you again to do this same one, but in San Francisco. That way it's closer to you.
That works for me.
Yeah, and if any of you are in San Francisco or if you're in San Francisco, if you know of a place, or even, we try to stay away from corporate, but at this point, again, it's hard, so only companies are the ones more arrogant to have this type of stuff. So if any of you have someone who it's good on offering the place for meetups and stuff like that, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to. Yeah. So again, thank you guys. Appreciate it for coming. And again, I'll see you guys in the next event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. It was really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be out there for a little bit if anyone has any other questions. Yeah, Julia.